The compound on Ademola Street had a way of making women feel chosen. The bougainvillea climbed the white walls. Oud drifted through the corridors. The quiet inside was not the quiet of emptiness. It was the quiet of things carefully managed, of a household that had learned over many years to absorb sound. Ngozi had stood in that courtyard 23 years ago and thought a woman could build a life here. She had not thought to ask what the building would cost. Now she stood at the back of Kemi's welcome gathering with a glass of zobo she had not touched and watched the evening take shape around her. Kemi was 31, marketing executive, coral Ankara, gold earrings catching the light. When Alhaji leaned down to whisper in her ear, she tilted her face up toward him and smiled. Across the room, Adaeze stood with a glass of Chapman and a smile that had not shifted in 40 minutes. Ngozi set her zobo on the nearest table and did not pick it up again. The pepper soup was made with goat meat, the way Kemi's mother made it. Adaeze had extracted this detail from a 30-minute phone call with Kemi's aunt 3 weeks earlier, framed as party planning. When Kemi tasted it, she went still. She looked at Adaeze and said, "How did you know?" Adaeze touched her hand and said, "I asked around. I wanted you to feel at home." She said it simply, without decoration, the way people say things they have rehearsed until the rehearsal disappears. The tension Kemi had carried into the compound that evening, months of it, worn tight at the base of her neck since the introduction ceremony, loosened. She sat back into the settee. Across the room, Ngozi watched her relax and felt something cold move through her chest. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm. Kemi had her own wing, freshly painted, new curtains, a private entrance. Alhaji was attentive and consistent. Adaeze appeared at every pressure point. Morning tea, fellowship meetings, Lekki shopping trips. And each time Kemi arrived, braced for a slight and left without one. Something in her chest unnoted a little more. By the 6th week, she had stopped locking her window at night. She did not notice the room at the end of the east corridor until the 7th week. Plain wooden door. No handle on the outside. Only a keyhole. The house staff passed it without looking at it, with the practiced indifference of people who had learned not to. When Kemi asked Adaeze about it over morning tea, Adaeze refilled her cup and said, "Storage, broken handle, Alhaji keeps forgetting to fix it." Said it the way she said everything, with complete, unhurried calm. Then asked about Kemi's sister in London, and the subject dissolved before Kemi could decide if she had been answered or redirected. The sandal near the garden wall she mentioned to no one. Pink Velcro strap, fresh dot on the sole. She stood in the afternoon heat, holding it for a long moment, then set it back down and walked inside and told herself it belonged to a visitor's child. She almost believed it. In September, Alhaji reduced her allowance for the first time. The reason he gave was cash flow. A land acquisition in Abuja. Temporary, 2 months at most. He said it over dinner, calmly, already moving to the next subject before she had processed the first. She called her mother that night, and her mother asked how she was settling in, and Kemi said fine, and her mother said, "I knew he was a good man." And Kemi lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling and said, "Yes, mommy." She told Adaeze the next morning. She had not planned to. It came out during tea, flat, testing. Adaeze set her cup down and nodded slowly. "He did the same to me in the beginning," she said. "It's a control mechanism. Let it run its course. Push back now and you make it worse." "So I do nothing," Kemi said, and there was an edge in her voice that she did not fully conceal. "You do nothing visibly," Adaeze said, unfazed. "That is different from doing nothing." She paused, turned her cup in her hands once, then looked up. "I opened a small account in the early years. His accountant doesn't know about it. I put something in it every month. I can show you how. Kemi went back to her wing and sat on her bed for a long time. She turned the offer over and over. It was either the most generous thing anyone had done for her in this compound, or it was the most dangerous. She could not determine which. That was the problem. She sat with the uncertainty and it did not resolve. She let Adaeze show her how. October came and with it the rains and a tightening Kemi could not name. She began watching the house staff differently, the direction of their eyes, what they did not say when she asked simple questions. Grace, the housekeeper, 11 years in the compound, who laughed easily at everything and whose laughter never reached the upper half of her face. Kemi began keeping notes in her phone. Small things, dates, observations, the sound of a car in the driveway and what mood followed it. 3 times she deleted them. 3 times she started again. Then one Tuesday night, Alhaji came home with 2 men she had never seen. They sat in the main parlor for 3 hours with the door closed. Kemi passed the corridor once and heard clearly and unmistakably her own name through the door. Just her name, nothing around it that she could make out, but it was enough to stop her feet on the tiles. She went to her wing and sat on the floor with her back against the bed and stayed there until the voices stopped and the front door opened and closed twice and the compound went quiet. The next morning, Adaeze came to her door before breakfast. Unusual. Did Kemi sleep well? She looked tired. Should Grace make akamu? Kemi looked at Adaeze's face. Open, warm, concerned. I'm fine, she said. Thank you. She ate the akamu. It was good. It was always good. That was the part she could not get around. Adaeze's warmth was real enough that Kemi could not locate the seam between the genuine and the performed, and that uncertainty was its own kind of trap. Ngozi called on a Thursday evening. Kemi answered before she could stop herself. How are you? Ngozi asked. Kemi did not answer immediately. When she did, her voice was flat and deliberate. I heard my name, she said, through a closed door. I heard it from men I didn't know. The line went quiet after she said this. Not the quiet of a bad connection, but the quiet of someone on the other end, absorbing something they were not surprised to hear, which was its own kind of answer. Then Ngozi said, Come to me, don't call ahead, don't tell Adaeze you're coming. She said it quietly, the way you say something when you have been waiting a long time to say it. And now that the moment has arrived, you want to be careful, not to frighten it away. Kemi arrived the following Thursday when Adaeze was at fellowship dinner. They sat in Ngozi's parlor with the lights low and a ceiling fan turning overhead, and Ngozi talked without stopping, because she had learned that if she stopped, she would not start again. Amara, the date, the criteria, the selection. When Ngozi finished, the room held it for a moment. Kemi sat without moving, her hands flat on her knees, looking at a point on the floor that had nothing on it. Then she said, She's been kind to me. I know, Ngozi said. She opened an account for me, Kemi said, still looking at the floor. She showed me how to protect myself from him. Because it keeps you close, Ngozi said, gently but without softening it. A woman with a small secret feels like she has an ally. Adaeze was shown the same thing once. It worked on her too. Kemi stood and went to the window. Outside the street was dark and wet. A motorcycle moving slowly through a puddle of orange street light, its engine a low throb that faded and was gone. I need to think, she said. I know, Ngozi said. I'm not saying I don't believe you. I know that too. Ngozi said it without impatience, the way you speak to someone standing at the edge of something high, not rushing them, just staying close. Kemi left without taking anything Ngozi offered. Not the water, not the contact in Enugu, not the journalist's name. She drove back to the compound and sat in her car outside her private entrance for 20 minutes with the engine off and her hands still on the wheel. Then she went inside and locked her door. She did not sleep. She went back to Ngozi 3 weeks later, not because anything dramatic had shifted, because she had spent those 3 weeks watching, and the watching had confirmed what she did not want. Confirmed the small erasures, the managed access, the way Adaeze positioned herself between Kemi and the outside world, so gradually that each individual movement seemed like affection. When Ngozi opened the door and saw her face, she stepped aside without a word. The contact in Enugu, Kemi said, walking past her into the parlor. And the journalist's name. Ngozi looked at her for a moment. What happened? Kemi turned around. Nothing happened. That's the point. Nothing happens. It just gets smaller and smaller, and one day you look up and the walls are very close. Ngozi went to get her phone. Amara did not come easily. 4 calls over 2 weeks. The first time she picked up, said nothing, and the line went dead. The second rang out. The third, a brother answered, clipped, suspicious, and said Amara was not available. And how did this woman get this number? Kemi said she was a friend, and the brother said Amara doesn't have friends in Lagos, and ended the call without waiting for a response. The fourth time was late on a Sunday night. Amara picked up and let several seconds pass before she spoke. "What do you want from me?" she said finally. Her voice was flat and careful, the voice of someone who had learned to open doors slowly. "Nothing," Kemi said. "I want to give you something." "Everyone who calls me from that city wants something," Amara said. "They want my silence or they want my signature. Those are the 2 things people from Lagos have ever wanted from me." "I read a journal," Kemi said, "written by the woman who came after you. She kept it in the kitchen ceiling." The line went so quiet that Kemi held the phone away from her ear to check the screen. Still connected. She brought it back. Then Amara said, barely above a whisper, "She wrote it down." "Yes," Kemi said. "She wrote down what she did and she kept it in that house." It was not a question. It was Amara turning something over in her mind, feeling the full shape of it. "Yes," Kemi said again, and waited. A long silence settled between them, and Kemi did not try to fill it. Then Amara exhaled, a long, slow breath, like something being set down after a great distance. "I'll come," she said. Meanwhile, the compound tightened further. Alhaji introduced a new arrangement, dinner with both women 3 nights a week. No explanation given. He was pleasant at the table, funny even, and passed dishes and stirred conversation, and the 3 of them performed normality with the precision of people who understood exactly what was at stake in the performance. Adaeze during these dinners was exact. She deferred to Kemi on small things in front of Alhaji.
"Ask Kemi, she has better taste."
And the deference felt like a gift, and Kemi received it and knew it was a display and had no choice but to accept it, because the alternative was to show her hand at a table where she was not yet ready. After one of these dinners, Alhaji walked her to her wing and stood in the doorway with his hands in his pockets, unhurried, as though he had all the time available to him in the world. "You seem unsettled lately," he said. "Work stress," Kemi said. "A difficult client." He looked at her steadily. "You're not working. I asked you to pause while you settled in." She had refused to accept this as a directive and filed it as a suggestion and continued working remotely. And he had known for 2 months and said nothing and was saying it now, which meant the silence had been storage. He had been keeping it until he needed it. "I'll wrap up the project," she said. He touched her face. briefly, almost gentle, and left. She listened to his footsteps down the corridor until she couldn't hear them anymore, then closed her door and stood with her back against it. She called her sister in London and said, "I need to tell you something and I need you not to panic." Her sister panicked. It took 40 minutes. When she finally hung up, she sat on her bed and thought about what stopping would look like. The managed life, the compound rhythms she had already half learned. 20 years from now, a new wife arriving, and herself in the kitchen doorway with a warm smile and a pot of pepper soup made with the right meat. She went to sleep. She woke at 4 in the morning, already sitting up. She was not stopping. The journal was in the kitchen ceiling. Third panel from the window, the one that sat fractionally higher than the others. She had been searching for 11 days, one location each half day, always with her phone open to a contact ready to dial. She read it on the stool without coming down. Her legs went numb. She did not notice until she tried to stand. The early entries she moved through quickly. The middle section she read slowly. The entries about Amara she read 3 times, then put the journal back and replaced the panel and stood at the sink running cold water over her hands for a long time, long after the need for it had passed. Then the front door opened. Adaeze's voice in the corridor. Back early, fellowship had ended, talking to Grace about tomorrow's market list. The sound of keys, of shoes on tiles, getting closer. Kemi turned off the tap and dried her hands and turned around and leaned against the counter and arranged her face into something that had no name in it. Adaeze appeared in the kitchen doorway and stopped when she saw her. "You're up late," she said. "Couldn't sleep," Kemi said. "I came for water." Adaeze looked at her. A half second longer than necessary, not long enough to call suspicious, just long enough to feel it. "There's cold water in the small fridge in your wing," she said. "You don't need to come all the way to the main kitchen." "I forgot," Kemi said, and held Adaeze's gaze without moving. Another half second. Then Adaeze said goodnight and walked down the corridor. Kemi stood without moving until she heard the bedroom door close at the far end of the compound. Then she counted to 60. Then she left. Sister Bose received her on a Tuesday with a manila envelope. Bank transfers, 3 years of them. Adaeze's personal account to Sister Bose's ministry fund. Same amount each time, each one arriving within 48 hours of a moment in the compound that could have cracked open into something public. Kemi laid them on the desk one at a time, slowly, like a hand of cards being shown. Sister Bose looked at each page as it landed. Her face did not change, but her breathing did. When the last page was down, Kemi said, "One question. When Amara was being removed from that compound, did you know?" The office clock ticked on the wall. The room smelled of floor cleaner and plastic flowers and the particular stillness of a space where difficult things were regularly brought and then sent away unchanged. Sister Bose looked at the pages for a long moment before she answered. "I suspected," she said finally. The words came out like something that had been waiting a long time to be said out loud and was smaller than expected once it was. "Then you owe her," Kemi said. "Not me, her." She stood and straightened her wrapper. "I'm giving you the chance to decide what you do with your own story. That chance was never given to Amara. I'm not certain you deserve it either, but here it is." She left the envelope on the desk and walked out without looking back. Amara arrived from Enugu on a Saturday on a bus and sat across from Kemi in Ngozi's parlor, and neither of them spoke for a full minute. The silence was not awkward. It was 2 women looking at each other across a distance that had no clean name, recognizing something. Then Amara reached into her bag and placed a letter on the table between them. Alhaji's handwriting, 4 paragraphs, written before the lawyers existed in the story, when he was still making promises in his own hand. 3 clauses that directly contradicted the agreement Amara had signed 4 years in a Bible. I didn't know if it was enough, Amara said. It's enough, Kemi said. Amara looked at her directly. You could still leave, she said, before this gets worse. You're young. You have a career. So did you, Kemi said simply. Amara looked at the table. When she spoke again, her voice changed pitch, not breaking, but tightening, the way a wire sounds when weight is added to it. My daughter is 7 years old. She calls me auntie on the phone. She doesn't know yet. The room held that. She'll know your voice, Kemi said. Before this is done, she'll know your voice. The confrontation with Adaeze came after Adaeze moved first. Kemi returned to the compound on a Monday evening, and Grace met her at the wing entrance, positioned, not casual, the way someone stands when they have been told to wait there. Madam Adaeze would like to see you, she said, and did not meet her eyes. The good cups were out, tea already poured and waiting. Adaeze sat with her hands in her lap and waited until Kemi had settled before she spoke. Someone has been asking questions about this compound, she said. Her voice was even, measured, the voice of a woman delivering information rather than starting a confrontation. A journalist, Alhaji's lawyer, mentioned it this afternoon. A woman from Enugu has been making calls. She paused and looked at her tea. I want to help you, Kemi. I have always wanted to help you. But if you are building something that brings chaos into this house, I cannot protect you from what follows. Kemi let the offer sit there for a moment without touching it. Were you helping me? She said.
Or were you
managing me? Something shifted in Adaeze's face, almost imperceptible, the way a wall looks before a crack appears in it. I read the journal, Kemi said. All of it. The sitting room went very still. The photographs on the walls, the good Ankara cushions, the framed Proverbs verse above the door that Adaeze had chosen herself the year she redecorated. Leave the compound, Adaeze said. Her voice had dropped, the evenness gone. Take what you can carry and go. Whatever you are building, build it from outside these walls. So the next one gets the welcome I got, Kemi said. There will always be a next one, Adaeze said. That is not something you or I can change. Not if we stop it. You cannot stop it. Adaeze said it without cruelty, which made it worse. He's too connected. You will try and fail and lose everything, and he will still be here, and I will still be here, and a new woman will arrive. And nothing will have changed except you will be going, and whatever life you had before this will be gone with you. You're afraid, Kemi said. I am practical, Adaeze said. In this room, Kemi said quietly, they are the same thing. Adaeze stood and walked to the window. Outside the compound wall, the street carried on without them. Generators, motorbikes, a woman balancing a tray of plantain on her head, moving slowly past the gate as she had moved past it every evening for years, unaware of what happened on the other side of the wall. He found me the same way he found you, Adaeze said. To the window, to the street, to no one in particular. I was 27. The woman before me tried to warn me. I decided she was bitter, and I moved into her wing and repainted the walls. I know, Kemi said. You wrote it down. I wrote it down so I would not forget what I had done. She said it quietly, and the quietness of it was not calm. It was the sound of something that had been said only inside a person for a very long time, finally being said aloud. Then you already know, Kemi said, that you cannot keep doing it. A motorbike passed outside, then another. The neighbor's generator shifted pitch in the dock. Izioma hails her mother's mouth, Adaeze said. Just that. just the child's name and a detail offered into the room like an admission. She's 7, Kemi said. She calls Amara auntie on the phone. She doesn't know yet. Adaeze turned from the window. Something in her face had moved, not broken, nothing so clean as that. Shifted, like a structure that has been load-bearing so long, it has forgotten what it was built for and is only now being asked to remember. She looked at Kemi for a long moment. Then she said,
What do you need from me?
It did not move quickly after that. Alhaji's lawyers sent a letter to Kemi's family in November, carefully worded. Nothing explicit, just the shape of consequences, the outline of what a contested exit from a compound like this could cost a family like hers. Her brother called from Canada, his voice tight with alarm. Her mother called twice in one day. This man has reached. Her mother said, I know, mommy. Your father's family will say, Mommy, Kemi said, do you trust me? A long pause on the line, the kind that has weight in it. That means the person on the other end is doing something harder than answering. You are my daughter, her mother said finally. That's not what I asked. Another pause, longer. Then, yes. God help me, yes. Sister Bowles spoke at the Women in Faith conference in Victoria Island on a Friday in November. 12 minutes, named nothing, said enough. 3 journalists in the room started pulling threads before she left the podium. Amara gave one interview in Ngozi's parlor. 90 minutes, she brought the letter. When the journalist asked how she felt, Amara looked at the ceiling fan, turning slowly overhead, considered the question as though it deserved the full weight of consideration, and then said, like I can hear my own voice again. Adaeze submitted 4 pages through a lawyer. She did not appear publicly. She signed her name and it was unambiguous, and Alhaji's team understood immediately what it would cost him. It was not over. It became a different kind of battle. Fluorescent lit rooms, people in suits, counterclaims, delays that stretched into the following year. Some mornings Kemi sat in her sister's flat in Surulere and thought about the managed life and how quiet it had been. She sat with that thought until it passed, which it always did, and then she got up and made tea and went back to work. On a night in December, the 4 women are not together. Kemi is on her sister's balcony in Surulere, a plate of food beside her, going cold, that she has not touched yet. Street noise rises from below, generators, a distant church, a child being called in for the night by a voice that carries clean across the rooftops. Ngozi is in her car with the engine running and the headlights on, finally going somewhere definite. Adaeze is in the compound kitchen standing on a stool. She lifts the 3rd ceiling panel from the window. She takes out the blue journal and holds it for a moment. The weight of it, 20 years pressed between the pages. Then she steps down, crosses to the gas burner, holds one corner of it to the flame, and watches it go. Amara is in Enugu on the phone, and the voice on the other end is small and says, Mommy. The first time, the very first time, that word has come through that line. And Amara sits down on her kitchen floor, right where she is standing, and puts her hand over her mouth, and then takes it away and says, Yes, it's me. I'm here. I'm coming to get you. The compound on Ademola Street sits quiet in the December heat. The bougainvillea climbs the white walls. The wood drifts through the corridor. The roof is just a roof.